So here we go. So yeah, this is exciting to be finally going out for bid for the 2024-25 request for proposals. If you have questions, we're going to save everything for the end. So you can put them in the chat and we'll monitor that. So that would be great. That way it should expedite things as we move forward. So we have most familiar people with us today, so I don't want to belabor everything. So you all know our mission is, as is yours, to enhance the lives of older adults in the community and provide advocacy, action, and answers on aging. I want to introduce the staff that's with us today. First of all, we have Abby Lagerman, our administrative assistant, who's driving the show as we speak. Chris Fulton, our home and community-based service manager. Nancy Lonsdale, our chief financial officer. Kian Yock, our grants planning manager. So all of you know that the Area Agency on Aging, AgeSmart, is one of 13 in Illinois and one of over 600 in the country, and we're all separate entities. We are a nonprofit organization governed by a volunteer board of directors and counseled by an advisory council comprised of older adults and community volunteers. AgeSmart develops a comprehensive 3-year plan, which is reviewed annually by the board and the advisory council. They are the individuals who set the service priorities. Those are the services that are to be funded and that we're going to be talking about in this process. Funding for the area agency comes from the Federal Older Americans Act through a funding formula to states. And you can see those 13 areas in that tiny little map there. And then another funding formula flows that to AgeSmart and then to our local service providers who we refer to as grantees in this RFP process. So we have 4 roles, key roles as an area agency on aging. We plan for services, develop then where there's gaps, and we also coordinate services with other organizations as not to duplicate any services. And in some cases, we deliver services ourselves here at our office with our staff. So today we're talking about the services that we're seeking proposals for. It's not all of the services that AgeSmart funds, but just some of the key ones, the access services and nutrition services. They're all funded by the Federal Older Americans Act. They're all available to people over 60. And grantees and people who are applying for these to provide these services can propose a specific service area within the planning and service area, PSA, which includes Bond, Clinton, Madison, Monroe, Randolph, St. Clair, and Washington counties. So no Older American Act service, which is all of these in this list that are out for bid currently, can be means tested, with the exception of home delivered meals, which the need is determined by an assessment from the case managers at either the case coordination unit or the managed care case managers. Although there is no means testing, we really encourage grantees to target to those persons with greatest social and economic need. There's no charge for any of the service, so the grantees cannot charge. They can only ask for a suggested donation. If that person cannot pay that suggested donation, the service is still provided. And that suggested donation is titled Program Income in the Budget. And after we go through the budget, Nancy will talk a little bit about those definitions. So the services we're seeking proposals for are assisted transportation, which is usually provided with an escort. An assisted transportation is door to door, and often the escort will wait with the individual. I'm going to skip to transportation then. Is transporting persons to and from the community, usually in buses, usually, and resources. So that participant can get to doctor's appointments, events, and reduce isolation and maintain independence in the community. So then when we look at information and assistance, this is providing current information on opportunities and services available within their community, offering links to individuals for opportunities and services that are available, and ensure that they have adequate follow-up with those individuals should they need assistance after the initial interaction. Telephone reassurance was something that we started funding with our statewide initiative for social isolation. And then, of course, during the pandemic, it became even more important. Those are weekly telephone calls to individuals to provide reassurance and reduce isolation. So then when we look at our nutrition services, we have congregate dining. Those are meals in a congregate setting. Senior centers are typical. Not always exactly senior centers, but sometimes we have some restaurant-based programs, and you can offer innovation and innovative services with this grant. So, and we encourage that innovation, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, different times of the day, as simple examples. And then, of course, there's home delivered meals, providing meals to older persons who are homebound because of illness or disability. So all the service guidelines and the details about how these services are to be provided are in the Smart Simple portal, where you all submitted your letter of intent. So those details are in there. And the other thing that's in there is the RFP with all of the instructions. So what we're saying today are just highlights, but the details are in writing in those RFP instructions. So take a look at those when you're completing your applications. Some grant details. The grant is for October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. The available funds are based on, which are listed on page 4 of those RFP instructions. The estimated funding levels are based on demographics and service trends listed per county. The federal and state appropriations could increase, that would be nice, or decrease. So it could change throughout even the grants process here. Technical assistance. This is very important. We will not be answering any phone calls related to the request for proposal. So if you have any questions after today, you must submit them to rfp@agesmart.org, and that is listed in those instructions also. So no phone calls with questions, only email questions. Grant requirements. So you have to use that grant portal to submit your application. You must have a 15% match and demonstrate that in your budget. And once again, Nancy will talk about program income match and local cash after we go through the budget. Grants are due on March 17th. This is key too. So if you're somebody who might be doing this last minute and you get to noon on the 17th, after noon, we will not be offering any instructions whatsoever at that RFP thing. It's only, but the grant, you can submit your grant until midnight on the 17th. But any questions, you must have every question in by noon on the 17th. And then just last but not least, AgeSmart won't be paying for any cost affiliated with the grant application process. So you see that technical assistance, that is key, and those timing things as far as questions go. But hopefully you've submitted your grant like way before St. Patrick's Day, right? So I'm going to hand it over to Kian, and Kian is going to walk you through the Smart Simple portal and the whole grants process. So you'll be able to actually see it. Most of you will be familiar with it if you're a current grantee. So here you go. Take it over, Kian.
Great. Thanks, Joy. Well, good morning, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. So we have a lot to cover. So as Joy mentioned earlier, so if you could hold the questions to the end, we're going to answer all the questions later, but feel free to post your questions. I believe the chat, we don't have any Q&A session available, correct? Okay, and everybody could see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay. So what you're looking at here is our test applicants portal home screen. So you can find your applications under My Application in Progress. So it looks like we have 2 pending applications. So I'm going to click on In Progress. So we have Title 3B and C application types. So our applicant is applying for all 3B services and 3C services. So if you're only applying for nutrition services, you will see just 3C. If you're applying for only some of the 3B services, you'll only see 3B. So now I'm going to start with the 3B application. So we have 6 different sections. Think of this as your application packet. First is your contact information. General information is a summary of your letter of intent. So you have services that you have selected. You can ignore this Add Service button. Even if you click on it, you will not be able to add any services because your application has been already created based on your letter of intent. The minimum requirements: applicants must meet the following criteria. And all of you here today stated in your letter of intent, you will be able to meet all these requirements. And in your application, you will have an opportunity to elaborate on that. We have a match requirement, which is 15% minimum. Okay, you must be able to contribute at least 15% of the total cost of the service. It can be both cash and in kind. And Nancy's gonna, explain a little more in the budget after the budget walkthrough. But your budget must be able to support that. Now we're gonna move on to program narrative. So notice we have a program narrative for each service you're applying for. So I'm going to go ahead and open one. So there are 5 different components to the narrative. First one is a needs statement, program plan and design. You can see there are quite a few questions, outreach, innovation. So what do I mean by innovation? So we're looking for a creative approach to solving a problem, right? So it is an uncommon solution to a common problem. I mean, it could be big or small. It could be related to your fundraising, outreach, maybe recruiting volunteers, or some ways to help revitalize your congregate dining program or senior center. So the scope could be pretty broad. Performance history. So this is where you describe your past performance, both organizational and program specific. So if you're a new applicant, who do not have a current funding from AG Smart, you can describe your past performance with other similar grant here, okay? And you're also required to submit letters of recommendation. There are a couple things I'd like to show you here. So now this text box expands, okay? And you can directly type in, or you can copy and paste block of text here from a Word document. If you want to print out this blank application at this time, you can click on the service summary button. And you will have this PDF version of your application. And of course, as you complete each narrative questions and you save draft, you can always log out and then come back and pick up where you left off. And when you print this service summary, this will have all its responses and you will have a complete narrative application that you can download. Okay. Oops. Yep. And for each service, you will complete this narrative. And you can see the same components. There might be some program-specific questions under program plan and design, but other than that, questions are pretty consistent. So you will complete each program narrative. And once you're done, you will have to submit. Of course, you have to save and then submit. This will not submit your application. Think of it as you're putting your complete narrative in a sealed envelope, and that goes into your application packet. You have to submit your narrative first before you can submit your application. I'm going to go back out and I'll show you how the process works. I'm going to open 3C application. We're applying for both congregate and home delivered meals. Notice congregate meals program narrative status is submitted. So if I open it, and you can see, okay, ignore additional documents. I'm going to start with the needs statement. So everything is all filled out, right? But now there's no way to go back and change. There's no editing. Once your narrative is submitted, you cannot make any changes. So once your narrative is complete to your satisfaction, and then you will hit that submit button and then you'll submit. So now I'm going to show you the 3C2 home delivered meals application. So all its responses are actually filled out except just one last question. So if I forget to fill out this last question and try to submit and see what happens. Submission failed because program performance cannot be empty. So this even highlights the missing the response questions. So, and I'll save. So then now I'm ready to submit. So this is how you submit your narrative. It's going to ask you, once you submit it, you will not be able to make any modifications. Yes. There you have it. So you can see my 3C1, C2 application narrative have been submitted. So this is only part of your application packet, right? So you have a program narrative, we have a budget, of course, and there's attachments, and at the end, we're going to check assurances. So program narrative is complete. I'm going to move on to budget. So for our current grantees, this screen should look familiar to you. And this is where, so for any new applicants, you have to download the budget template and then save on to your computer. And for the current grantees, you cannot use the budget template that you have used in the past. You have to download this budget template. And also instructions have been updated as well. So please download your budget template and instructions. And if you are applying for both Title 3B and C services, you're going to complete only one budget for all services you're applying for. And then you're going to submit the same budget for each application. Because remember, in 3B application, this is the same, right? We have the same 5 sections of the application packet. So I'm going to just show you what our budget template looks like first. Oops, that is a simple one. Okay, so once you open your budget, you should see this budget summary. So actually I have some services filled out, but I will come back and show you how to complete the budget. But right now I'm going to focus on how to submit the complete budget, just to show you the flow and how to submit the rest of the application. So once you have a complete budget, you will come back to this screen, and using this upload button, then you'll upload the budget. So click upload. You can drag and drop file here, or you can use this file browser. I'm going to drop my sample budget. So it's not uploading right now. I think that's because I had the sample budget open. Let's do it again. There you go. So total, there you go. So now you see your budget has been uploaded. Next, we'll put fiscal year. We're applying for 2024. So once your budget has no error, your budget upload, this Excel budget template is complete. And when I save draft, all those budget summary, all those budget data will populate this table here. So we'll see what happens. There you go. So after you uploaded your budget and you hit save draft and you don't see this budget information populated in this table, that means there's something wrong with your budget. There's an error in the budget. So you have to go back, and without your budget information populated in this table, your budget will not be submitted and will not be considered. We cannot even see your budget. So that is very important. And our budget instructions here is very detailed, straightforward, easy to follow step-by-step guidance. So you shouldn't have any issues following along. Okay, so our budget has been uploaded. It looks like data has been all parsed out correctly. We're going to move on to attachments. So this is where you would upload any program-specific attachments that are required. So for this application, you will need to upload a job descriptions of staff and volunteers who will be involved in the program. So it's for both services, because we're applying for both services. So you will upload the document. It's already uploaded here. I'm going to save draft. Okay, so last one is assurances. So assurances, this is self-certification. By signing this application, you agree to perform all the service activities consistent with the state and federal standards and policies and procedures and Age Smart Service guidelines. You can download our full assurances to see the full terms. And when you agree, you will check this box. And this will serve as your electronic signature. Okay, save draft. Okay, so far we did program narrative. Both narratives are submitted. Our budget has been uploaded. And data parsing was successful. We have attachment. Assurance have been checked. So now we're ready to submit. You ready? Here you go. Yes. There you go. Yay, submission successful. So at this point, you will receive a submission confirmation email. So to the email address, do you register? Okay, so now back to home screen. Now we have a one submitted application, which is our 3C application. And of course, we have a B, we still haven't completed. So that was just brief walkthrough of application and the submission flow. So now we are going to our budget. So if you see this protected view, make sure you enable editing. So this looks like simple spreadsheet, but there's a lot of complex data parsing thing running in the background. So this is why it's important to use this budget template. You cannot use just any Excel budget form. It has to be the form that you download from our website, our grants portal. As I mentioned, you can always pull up this budget directions and you can follow along. Okay, so notice we have some highlighted, this yellow cells. These are input fields, meaning these are for the information you have to type in. Okay, first, step one, type your organization name here. Next, you're going to select services. So line 4, column D through K are for your services. So click on this drop-down box and services. So I mentioned earlier, you're going to submit only one budget, the same budget for both 3B and 3C application. So here you will have to select C services as well if you are applying for nutrition services. So this drop-down box default value is set to none. It's at the top of this service selection. If I select wrong service by mistake, then I want to just delete. So now you have just blank instead of none. So it looks like it's very, not very noticeable, but this is going to throw a huge error. This is one of the reasons why your budget will not populate into the table. So for the columns that you don't use, make sure that the default value is selected. Okay, now I'm going to move on to expenses. So these expense sections, these are locked, meaning you cannot directly input dollar figures in those expenditures. So you have to input expenses in detail sheets. They are at the bottom, all these yellow tabs, these are expense categories. So you will have to complete this sheet for each expense categories. And it will pull the total cost for each expense category, and it will populate into this expenditure. So here, so let me show you the actual simple budget. Okay, so see we have some expenditure populated into this section, meaning that we have some actual expenses in the detail sheet. So for personnel, you list each employee who are involved in this program, their position, their annual salary, and then you allocate their salary to different services. Okay, the fringes. The fringe benefits, you'll list each individual benefits, and then you'll do the same. So for each expense sheet, the line 9 is bold highlighted. This is in kind. So this is where you put in kind expenses. So for, let's say you have some volunteers for telephone reassurance, right? That's personnel. It goes into your personnel in kind expense. If you have any donated rent or utilities, it could go here, but we don't have any in kind expense for occupancy. So in kind is part of match, right? So Nancy's gonna go over match requirements. So I'm not gonna elaborate on that, but we're gonna move on to revenues. So there are 4 types of different revenues. That line 23 is Age Smart Fund that you are requesting. So you will input those dollar amount for each service. In-kind revenue is directly pulled from your in-kind expense. So that's the same $1,800 from your in-kind from telephone reassurance. That's auto-populated. And local funds. Local funds are also part of match, right? That's the money generated by your fundraising and tax referendum, or your local government contributions, or like a big donation like legacy giving. Those are for local funds, and then you will list that for each service. And program income comes from your program participants. That's from your suggested donations, your program participants give for the services they receive. And notice the line 20 and line 28, the amounts are identical. Total expenditures and total revenue must be equal, and the funding difference must be 0. So if I reduce this by $1,000, oh, that was more than $1,000. So now, because these 2 cells are different, now they're in red. So funding difference 1,200. So we have to change that, right? So this must not be red. If they're red, your budget will be considered incomplete, and it will not be considered. The person served units, it's pretty straightforward. You're estimating the number of persons that you're going to serve and number of units that you're going to provide. So service unit definition is different for each service. So that's why you have to use your service guidelines. And everything else is auto-calculated. Line 42 shows your total match percentage, which shows about 15%. If this is less than 15%, this will be highlighted in red as well, which will not meet the minimum requirements. So that will throw an error. So this is your match, this is your contribution, and the rest, of course, that's the federal state share. This makes 100%. Okay. I think I've covered everything about the budget. Nancy, you might need to, might want to highlight some of the areas that I missed later. But this will be the end of my my presentation.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kian. And please, if you guys have questions, put them in the chat. Before Nancy discusses some of those sources of revenue, I want to also remind you that those RFP instructions are really important. The budget instructions are really simple and walk you through step by step. And you can always come back to this video, which will be sent to you later today. So Nancy, hand it over to you for program income match and local cash and anything we might want to add.
Okay, Kian, just put 0 in for that local cash, please.
This?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now we see down on line 42 that the percent of federal match is 0. So if you don't have, in kind or local cash equal 15%, it will be highlighted. So it makes it easy to see. So program income, also called project income, is basically donations for services from program participants. Everyone is encouraged, every grantee is encouraged to ask participants to help offset the cost of the program. So that will be their donations for their congregate meal, their home delivered meal. Someone comes in for information and assistance help, any for trips, any money that participants contribute is considered program income. It's not considered match because participants are providing it. You as a grantee are not providing it. In kind is any donated services or materials. You don't pay cash for them, but they have a significant value. Major one is always your volunteers. The other one is if you get donated food or you have donated rent, any building expenses that are donated. If you have, you're using a government center and you don't have to pay anything, so the rent and utility value of that. Also, you might have some people are in a church, they let you have a space, they also let you have free phone service or internet access. That would be in kind, and that would go on that the in kind line in your specific expense tabs in the budget. Then the last thing is local funds, and that's your last number to input into the budget. That's what helps you balance your revenues and expenses so there is no difference. It can be any kind of fundraising that you do. If you're lucky enough to live in a county that has a tax referendum, the money you receive from the county, you could be receiving money from local city or township government funds, United Way funds, some other grants that aren't federal grants. All that is considered local funds. So you put that number in last to make sure that your revenues and expenses equal 0. The other thing in this, please do not use pennies. It makes it harder for you to zero things out also. Sometimes if you use a calculation for percentages for your fringe benefits, it will add pennies. You can do a round to know pennies. but otherwise just whole dollars. I think that's everything I have.
Okay, before you leave, Paulette had asked a question. Is there an easy way to copy and post between the services?
Are you talking about the narrative or budget?
Right. I think that would be a narrative.
Yeah. Paulette, why don't you unmute and explain?
Yes, I was talking about the narrative. I mean, like under the program or under the general information or any one of those categories, you have the same questions that are popping up between transportation, INA, C1, C2. Is there an easy way, because the answer is probably not going to change. Is there a way to copy and paste that whole thing so that it goes on every single one of the applications instead of going in and out each time?
So each application is a separate session. So you have to, what I would do is just create a one Word document for each application, for each service, and then just copy and paste for each service. I won't go back and forth to different services. I will just open up assisted transportation, and you may have some similar needs assessment, through the different services that you provide, but you would have to just copy and paste into each section under that service. Does that make sense? There's no way to just copy once and then you will populate throughout all the services that you provide. It's not set up that way. So you will have to open up each application and just copy and paste.
Okay, thank you.
And then Emily had talked about letter of recommendation required. If you are a current grantee, your performance is what's going to lead that. If you're a new grantee, you're required to have 3 letters of recommendation.
Right, it was just for new grantees. For current grantees, the letters of recommendation are not required.
And then Deborah, I just want to say the bidders conference was not a requirement. So it will be recorded for anybody who missed it or could not attend for whatever reason. Or if you just want to see it again.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Any other questions from anyone? Well, we appreciate you taking the time to walk through this today. I'm hoping that we provided you enough simple instructions that it should be a smooth flow, and it'll be nice to have everything. This will be like your file cabinet. Everything will be in Smart Simple going forward with these grants. So that's how everything will flow. One last chance. Any other questions? Chris is here to answer any INA questions. But anyway, if not, wait, we got one new message here. The recording will be sent to the person who submitted the letter of intent. So that's where the recording will be. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone and have a great day. And don't forget, any questions after we hang up from this Zoom call, go to rfp@agesmart.org. So no phone calls. Thank you so much for attending. Appreciate it. Have a good day.